All right, today we're going to dig into a financial product that you've probably heard of, something that promises the absolute best of both worlds. It's called Indexed Universal Life Insurance, or IUL for short. It gets sold as this magic bullet for retirement, but as we're about to see, it is very much a two-sided coin. So let's figure out which side you might land on.
So let me just ask you this. What if you could get all the good stuff from the stock market, but none of the bad? Imagine capturing the awesome gains of something like the S&P 500 while being totally protected when it crashes. Yep, that's the hook. It sounds almost too good to be true, doesn't it? Our job today is to figure out if it is.
So what is an IUL really? Well, at its heart, it's a life insurance policy. But that's not the exciting part. The real secret sauce is how its cash value grows. Here's the key. It doesn't actually buy stocks directly. Nope. Instead, it just sort of watches a market index, and it credits your account with interest based on what that index does, but with some very, very important rules.
To figure out if an IUL is right for you, we have to pop the hood and see how this thing actually works. I mean, how on earth does it deliver on that promise of gains without the risk of loss? Well, the entire secret lies in one simple trade-off.
Honestly, this is the best way to think about it. It's like you're bowling, but you've put the bumper guards up. You can push that ball down the lane, and no matter how wobbly your shot is, it is never going to fall in the gutter. That's your protection. But because the bumpers are there, you're probably not going to hit that perfect, explosive, lightning-fast strike either. You've traded that home run potential for absolute safety from the worst-case scenario.
Now, in the world of IUL, those bowling bumpers have specific names. On one side, you've got the floor. That's your safety net. If the S&P 500 has a terrible year and drops 20%, you don't lose a single cent. Then, on the other side, you have the cap. Think of it as your speed limit. If the market soars by, say, 25%, you only get credited up to that cap. It's the fundamental trade you're making.
And this is the most common floor you'll see, 0%. What that means is, in a year the market gets crushed, your cash value gets credited with a 0. You don't lose a dime because of how the market performed. And let me tell you, this downside protection, this promise that 0 is your hero, is the single biggest selling point of an IUL, period.
But then there's the other side of the deal. This is a typical range for the cap. So let's say the S&P 500 has a monster year and gains 30%. Awesome, right? Well, if your cap is 10%, you only get credited with 10%. You just missed out on that extra 20% of growth. And that is the price you pay for that cozy 0% floor. You give up the shot at a perfect strike to guarantee you'll never throw a gutter ball.
So, with that core trade-off in mind, let's look at the first side of the coin. Let's get into the powerful advantages that make people so excited about IULs in the first place.
Okay, so beyond that downside protection we've been talking about, there are other huge benefits. Your cash value grows tax-deferred, which is great. Then, later in life, you can access that money through policy loans, and if it's done right, that income can be tax-free. That's a huge deal for retirement. Plus, it definitely offers more growth potential than something super conservative like whole life insurance. And of course, at the end of the day, it's still life insurance, so it provides a tax-free death benefit to your family.
All right, that all sounds fantastic, doesn't it? No market losses, tax-free growth, tax-free income. It all leads to the obvious question, right? There has to be a catch. I mean, come on. A product this powerful must have some complexities or risks hiding just under the surface.
And you'd be right. So now it's time to flip the coin over. We need to talk about the hidden risks, the things that can go seriously wrong if an IUL isn't structured or managed just perfectly.
Okay, this is where you really need to listen up. Those caps, they don't just limit your gains. The insurance carrier can actually lower them over time. Meanwhile, the internal cost of insurance, the fee to keep the policy going, it increases every single year as you get older. This creates a dangerous ticking clock. If your cash value doesn't grow fast enough to outrun these rising costs, the policy can basically eat itself from the inside out and implode. And that leads to the #1 killer of these policies, underfunding. Not putting enough money in is the main reason they fail.
Okay, so now that we've seen both the good and the bad, the central question becomes a really personal one. How do you figure out if this complex tool actually fits into your financial plan? You know, to really understand IUL, it helps to see where it fits in the family. If you want guarantees and stability above all else, whole life is your answer.
If you're a more aggressive investor who wants unlimited market upside and you can stomach the full downside risk, then Variable Universal Life, or VUL, might be for you. The IUL sits right in the middle. It's designed for that person who wants better than safe returns, but absolutely demands protection from market crashes.
Success with an IUL is never an accident. It is always by design. And the path is very specific. First, you have to maximize your funding. That means putting in a lot of money, especially in the early years, to build a big cash engine that can outpace those future costs. Second, you have to minimize the internal costs. You do that by designing the policy with the lowest possible death benefit you need, because a higher death benefit equals higher fees. And third, you have to manage it actively. This is not a set-it-and-forget-it investment, not even close.
So who is the ideal person for this? It's someone who has probably already maxed out their 401k and their IRA and is looking for another place to save with tax advantages. It's somebody who has the discipline to pay high premiums for over a decade. And they fit that middle ground profile. They really value safety, but they want more growth than they can get from other conservative options like bonds or CDs.
On the other hand, you should probably run away from an IUL if any of this sounds like you. If you want something simple and hands-off, this is not it. If you can't commit to overfunding the policy, those rising costs will eventually destroy it. If you're chasing the absolute highest uncapped market returns, there are way better ways to do that. And if you need guaranteed returns, again, there are better products out there for you.
This quote really captures the two-sided nature of this thing perfectly. The gap between a successful IUL and a failed one is just enormous. One creates a powerful stream of tax-free income in retirement, while the other becomes this incredibly costly mistake that falls apart just when you need the money most.
And that brings us right back to our two-sided coin. An IUL offers this really compelling promise, market-linked growth with no downside risk. But that promise comes at a price. You pay for it with capped returns, rising internal costs, and a complexity that demands your constant attention. So the final question really is for you to answer. Is that a trade you're willing to make? The answer depends entirely on your financial goals, your discipline, and which side of that coin you're prepared to land on.